We all love building around young, up-and-coming wide receivers in Dynasty, but the sophomore wide receivers, that second-year breakout, is what can make or break your Dynasty rosters. We are going to dive through the sophomore scrutiny series, focusing on those key wide receivers as they enter that second year. Stick around as we dive in and help you build some Dynasty champions. Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Sanctuary. That is right, we're going to talk some sophomore wide receivers. I'm joined by a phenomenal guest. Kev, you'll know him as at the boys on Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it these days. Of course, a huge part of what is happening over at the Devil Royale, which we are massive fans of here in the Sanctuary. Kev, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. Anytime I can pop in here a little bit on my off time and talk a little Dynasty, I'm excited. And it's Dynasty wide receivers. Thank God it's not running backs because I'm done with running backs. But we got wide receivers. I love chopping it up and talking about these second year guys. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Love it whenever we can get you on. And yeah, look, this is what everyone wants to talk about, isn't it? Young, sexy wide receivers. This is why we play Dynasty, just to talk about these guys. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk through probably the main guys, what they're looking like heading into those second years, what we're doing with them in Dynasty, and kind of what we feel about with their value and that side of things. So let's start at the top. Anyone here who said they saw this coming is a complete liar. We've all talked about it enough. Puka Nacua, phenomenal season last year, broke countless rookie records. The wide receiver 8 in DLF ADP right now. Kev, can he keep up? Can he repeat the phenomenal production of last year this year?
Oh, Puka. I think he can. I think that, when you're looking at what he was able to do, I think the targets, while they are boomed a little bit, right? They got a little juice because of Cooper and kind of the injury and everything there. They didn't necessarily add any pieces in that offense where you're like, oh man, there go some targets there, like on their depth chart, right? Like it's really him and Cooper Kupp. I know people like Demarcus Robinson, and I do too. Like, whatever. Like he's there, like he's fine. And Higbee's okay. Like when you're thinking of like from a tight end production standpoint, but really like it's these two guys, right? It's Puka and Cooper Kupp. So I do think that the battle is Cooper versus Puka and who wins that target share battle, right? And I think the thing that I noticed towards middle and end of the year last year when you watch the film and you're going over the breakdown, like they schemed a lot of stuff to Puka when Cooper was out there. Like it wasn't that they were scheming over to Cooper Kupp. Like they were really scheming for Nacua there. And I think that really stood out to me. Like that was the one thing, like you can look at all the advanced numbers and that's more your thing and you love that. And I love that for you. Like I don't do that. I like it. I understand it. And I listen to guys like you because you're smarter than me. But when you watch the film and you watch the games and you were really kind of looking at this, they were really relying on Nacua down the stretch and going to him in the big games in the fourth quarters and doing those things. They trusted him. So what that goes to me is like, hey, he stayed healthy for the first time in his career last year. Now you're looking at, hey, this coaching staff loves him. They were scheming for him. They were doing those things. Like, I think where he's going is fair to where he's probably going to produce. And like, he's a very like flat line. Hey, yeah, what you're getting with him is a wide receiver 1, and you should really kind of buy into that. Like, especially in that offense, and you love him to be there. I think the biggest question mark is, after Stafford, after, their head coach leaves, after Sean McVay, like, what are you getting? But you can't really do that. You're looking at it from this year and the next year. You should be pretty excited for having Nacua on your roster if you have him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, at the end of the day, if you've got him on your roster, he's probably found money, isn't he? Because you've probably spent nothing to acquire him and you're probably sitting there very pretty, given the production that he gave off last year. I think two things that I kind of am fascinated by is I think Jordan Roderick, the beat reporter for The Athletic, one of the best out there. I think she does phenomenal work. She's been talking about how last year Puka, he played that kind of Z, that Robert Woods role and was quite kind of narrow in terms of that role and his usage. Yes, they schemed a lot up, but he played that one position. She's talking about how they're potentially moving around this offense more this year. They're already talking about using him in those little the motion plays that we see, Cooper Kupp get phenomenal releases thing. And I think if they're already talking about opening up Nakua's playbook where he could potentially be moved around the field, that's exciting for me because that means that we're not just going to rely on that huge volume because it's generally lower value targets in terms of it's a lot of short and intermediate stuff. If we can start getting him some targets down the field, if we can start seeing some of those, 10, 15, 20 yard plus targets downfield, that raises his potential fantasy production, but without having to see increased volume. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. And then I think it was interesting you saying about who's it going to be, Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp. Why not both? Like Cooper Kupp played through injuries last year, and I think people seem to forget that a lot about him. But he was healthy down the stretch, and if you look at from week 13 on, Cooper Kupp was the wide receiver 7 in fantasy points. He had a 5-week stretch where he was healthy, playing good football, and looked like the old Cooper Kupp. Well, Puka Nacua was the wide receiver 3 during that stretch. Like, I don't think it needs to be an either or. I think there's enough targets, as you said, to eat for both of them in this offense. And I'm really excited about Puka Nacua going into that year 2. And I see no reason why he shouldn't be a solid, exciting wide receiver 1. Where I struggle though is I think it's the price to go and acquire him. I love him if you've got him on your roster. I love him in a startup at the point at which he's going. I've taken an average of the price on the DLF trade analyzer, keep trade cut, and my values, and you can see it there on the screen. 2 firsts and a second. That just feels too rich to go and play for any player that's not a superstar quarterback in my eyes. I can't pay multiple first-round picks for basically a non-quarterback. Do you think that you'd be comfortable sending that package for someone like a Puka Nacua?
No, I would not be sending any. I will not send more than 1 first for anybody that's not a quarterback, right? Like I'm not going out there. If it's 2 first, I'm getting a top 8 quarterback with probably another asset. Obviously, if you probably not get it just for 2 first. With Nacua, no, I don't feel like I can really justify on a roster unless I had a lot of extra firsts, giving up 2 firsts for him, because with the wide receiver position being so volatile too, like there's a lot of guys that can finish as a wide receiver 1 in points per game, week in, week out. Like there's production to be had there. Like, is Nacua going to win you a league? I don't know. I think he can get you in the playoffs, but I don't think that price is worth it. Like if you really wanted to go to get Nacua, really what I've seen a lot of guys be successful with, like depending on where your rankings are, you trade like, Drake London plus an asset for him. Like maybe you have Drake London and then one of those Isaiah Pacheco or one of those running backs in that running back 2 level where it's like, it's replaceable. Aaron Jones, for example, if someone really likes him, like you try to pair those guys to maybe try to tier up, it would be the way that you would try to go with Nacua there. I'm okay with that because that's pretty interchangeable with the running back position. And if you believe in Drake London, I don't know, like if you can finish higher than Nacua, you're okay with that deal. That's probably where I'm comfortable trying to get Puka. But from a first standpoint, I'm not giving up 2 firsts for even Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase. Like I just won't do that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the problem is that in the trade market, because as I said earlier, the guy that's rostering Puka has probably got found money. That price that you've almost got to come and basically steal him away, haven't you? Because nobody's just going to give him up for anything. So I think, I think if you can tier up to go and get him, I think that's a great move. But just talking pure trade value, no one's selling him for that right now. No. Moving across to our next guy, though, this is a guy that, look, we talk about a hell of a lot here in the Sanctuary. It's a Baltimore Ravens player, so we all know that Tom's obsessed.
I was going to say, Flowers, shocker. Tom talking about Zay Flowers. No way. I saw him write a 75 tweet thread the other day on Zay too.
Anytime we can talk about Zay, it's going to happen. But look, wide receiver 21 in ADP at the moment. I guess the big question is it was kind of a 2 seasons in 1 for Zay Flowers. First half of the season, yes, he was finding his feet as a rookie. Mark Andrews was healthy. He produced okay. Second half of the season, no Mark Andrews, starting to kind of get his feet under the table as a rookie. Absolutely exploded phenomenally. Do you think that we're going to see first half Zay Flowers, second half Zay Flowers, or potentially somewhere in between?
I think we're looking in between, right? I think we're playing in that gray. I think is an important thing to do. Is like, when you're looking at when Andrews was out, like he, the reason why I think he did have that boom is because there's something called first read share. So essentially, that's where Lamar is going. That went up to almost 30% when he was out there, and when Andrews was out, that his read was Zay Flowers, and that's why you definitely saw the targets go up and you saw his production go up. When he came back, though, it dipped again under 25% because Andrews was out there. Now, even with that, I do think that the targets are going to be there, right? Like you saw that. I mean, and he earned. The biggest thing is he was earning red zone targets down the stretch, like 6 to 8 red zone targets down the stretch too with that. And he's always that big play guy there. And to me, though, with I mean, OBJ was not good, but he did get targeted. Like he was getting targeted out there. So like that's where that production kind of like limit came from with Zay. I mean, I don't know. I'm not on the Rashad Bateman train. I've never been on the Rashad Bateman train. I see the hype right now in the offseason. It's always ever there. But I think that he's going to step in, and I think he'll live up to wide receiver 21. Now, whether he lives up to like, wide receiver 14 and he borderline, I don't know if we're ever going to get there, but he's a very, very solid wide receiver 2 option in this range of where I think he has a pretty safe floor, right? Like, I don't know how high his ceiling is when you're thinking of like, Andrews being there, and just this offense is going to be weird with Derrick Henry now and that kind of rushing upside, the volume that we see from the running backs, but he has a safe floor. Like, I think wide receiver 21 is a very, floor for him. So you're really kind of getting net positive if you draft him, because I do think that he'll always find himself around there. And if he gets the touchdown, like we saw the red zone and the end zone targets last year, he could definitely fight for that wide receiver 14 there. And so I'm not down on Zay. I just think that he's a floor guy. Like, you're drafting him at his floor here, which is okay. Like, that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I kind of agree with you that there's somewhere in between. I think that, look, we're going to see, as you said, some of that first target share drop. I think his overall target share could potentially drop from that second half of the season. But I also think that this offense is going to take a step forward. We always see it, quarterback second year in an offense. We've got Todd Monken with his feet under the table a little bit. I think this offense could take a step forward. I think Derrick Henry is going to give them an element that they were certainly lacking last year. The other element that I think, to your point of giving that floor for Zay Flowers, is Zay Flowers sees an awful lot of manufactured touches. Yeah. And I think that, I talk about this and it's something that I think is massively undervalued in the community as a whole. Zay Flowers saw 26 targets on screens last year. That was third behind only Rashee Rice and Tyreek Hill. This is the kind of Chris Godwin of old. This is the Deebo Samuel element where you can almost bank him for 2-3 targets manufactured in the kind of game, and then any targets he gets as a receiver on top of that, a bonus. And I think that just that 3, 4, 5 point a week floor from the screen and the end around and jet sweep touches, that's a really nice kind of banker to have week in, week out, that he's not even having to run routes for those. Basically, we're just saying those are getting thrown in. So I do think that, to your point, it's a really nice, safe, reliable option, which we don't often say for second year wide receivers. And I think I'm probably a little bit higher than you by the sounds of it in terms of that ceiling, because I do think this offense could take another step forward under Todd Monken for the second year. So we're talking prices. I think he's going around the first at the moment. Would you be happy sending your 2025 first to go and acquire Zay Flowers right now?
If it's late, yeah. I mean, if I'm a contender and I'm looking at it and I'm saying, hey, I need that wide receiver to maybe put me over the top, and I believe that offense is going to take that next step, mid to late first is okay. Like, as I've done my big board, it's very top heavy right now at the wide receiver position in the 25 class. I wouldn't say that, obviously guys are going to pop off, but I still think mid to late, you're okay with that, because I think being that second year. And I think you bring up a very good point about the manufactured touches. So I wrote a big spotlight on Lamar last year at my last company. And when you go through Todd Monken's offense at Georgia, he attempted 100 screen passes, mostly wide receiver screen passes and a little tight end screen passes in there, 3 straight years at Georgia. And he was like one of the only offensive coordinators that did that in college football. So you saw that last year. I don't think it's to as much as you were going to see this year. I think it's going to be more now as they transition. So the screen pass is going to be there. Those manufactured touches are going to be there too. So if I'm looking at it like mid to late first, I'm totally okay with this tier of wide receivers to give it him if I believe in that offense is going to take that next step.
Yeah, and we certainly know that Derrick Henry, not a natural back coming out the backfield for those screen passes. So maybe it's going to push it more towards wide receiver screens than running back screens next year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not naturally out there. I think that's where the Keaton Mitchell stands are still at. Like, they feel like they're still out there. But I think it's going to come, really. I mean, likely I think is going to have a role in that area, because they do use a lot of 12 personnel at Georgia, especially last year with Andrews banged up. They couldn't. So I think he's going to be there. But again, like, to me, this offense knows it's got to get its best player of the ball. And in my opinion, their best wide receiver is easily Zay Flowers. Like, that is their best weapon. And you could argue he is their best weapon. I mean, Andrews is great. He's 27. He looked great in the red zone, but Zay Flowers is that game changer. So to me, a team knows that. They're going to get the ball. And that's what he did at Georgia. That's what Todd Monken did. Last year, I think he tried to implement that, but the injuries hurt him a little bit.
Yeah, no, 100%. And if you are here you've not hit that subscribe button. What's happening? Like this, we're in key best ball season, dynasty season rolling along. We've got redraft just around the corner. Hit that subscribe button. We're closing on 2,500 subscribers. Come join the sanctuary. You will not regret it. The next guy we're going to talk about, look, I love me some Tank Dell. Anytime I get to wax lyrical, I'm very excited. Currently, the wide receiver 22, going exactly one spot behind Zay Flowers in ADP. Do you think that rookie season was just a flash in the pan, or do you think Tank Dell, with all the added competition in Houston now, is going to be here to stay for fantasy managers?
I don't think Tank Dell gets enough love out there, Rich. I'm with you here because when you're looking at it, like I know Stephon Diggs is there, but like the funny thing that I always laugh about with Dynasty and even like managers, even analysts, fanalists, however you want to say it. I mean, these guys were throwing dirt on Diggs last year. At the end of the year, they were talking about how bad he was. And then all of a sudden he lands in Houston and now Tank Dell's going to die. No, stop that. Like you can't do both. Like you can't use that for that example. And I like Nico and I think that him together with Dell is good, but Dell beat him in every category last year when they played together. Like Dell was target share, beat him there. Air yard share, beat him there. Weighted opportunity, fantasy points per game. He posted those things. I think he had a 2.3 or 2.4 yards per route run as well. So from an analytical perspective and a profile, Dell crushes these guys. And then when you saw what happened last year with Diggs, I like Diggs, but let's keep it real. Tank Dell is the wide receiver 1 on the Houston Texans depth chart. He is. And I know people are going to out there and say Diggs is, and Diggs could have an okay year this year. I know some people like Leo Pasiga, the guy I do a podcast with, he loves Diggs as a buy low for Dynasty. Yeah, that's fine. Like if you're getting him low, but I still think Tank Dell at wide receiver 22 is too low. I think he could be wide receiver 12 next year. With that range of outcomes and that wide receiver in the Dynasty range, he could be right there. He's tied to Stroud. I understand he's coming back from the broken fibula, but they've already invested in him. This coaching staff loves him. The biggest question for me is, when Bobby Slowick gets a head coaching job somewhere, probably next year, like what's his offense look like? I think that is the concern. But overall, Dell as a player, he's the wide receiver 1 on the Houston Texans.
Yes, I am 100% here for everything you've just said, Kev. I knew there was a reason we got you on. Yeah, I love it. I think, I would take Tank Dell straight up over Nico Collins in Dynasty right now.
Yes.
I think that Tank Dell is, we saw last year, I think he is so much more than people want to admit. I keep hearing people call him a slot receiver. I keep people hear him saying, he thrives on intermediate routes. This guy got moved all around the field and used downfield. If you don't believe me, go and watch the tape. Like he is not just a little underneath receiver that people seem to think he is. He can be used all over the field. The reason he broke his leg is that he was down, blocking in and around the red zone when, bigger receivers are scared to block, quite frankly. I've got no concerns about the injury. I think it was supposedly a clean break. I think, it's not something that's affecting ligaments and things like that. I think a broken leg, we're likely to see him recover very quickly. And look, I'm all for Tank Dell and think where he's currently valued is grossly undervalued. And also the most important thing, we know CJ Stroud loves him. I know it's just stupid off-season hype videos and things, but when CJ Stroud's sitting there listing out his dream offense of every single player in the NFL and he's sticking Tank Dell in there over the lorry list of wide receivers that he could have picked, that means that he loves this guy. And I think that Tank Dell, agree with you, he could easily be a wide receiver 1 this time next year. And yeah, I'm very concerned because I think Bobby Slowick is going to be getting an offense head coaching job at the end of the season. But I've got 12 months to worry about that, right? If Tank Dell can be a wide receiver 1 by January, February, it doesn't matter if Bobby Slowick gets moved on. Tank Dell's going to be worth a lot more in the next 9 months than he is right now. So yeah, I'm all in on Tank Dell, and I think that he's grossly undervalued right now. Similar price range to Zay Flowers in terms of where he's going. Straight up, would you prefer Tank Dell or Zay Flowers?
Tank Dell. I'm straight up with Tank Dell. They're close though. Like I said, is that weird tier I was talking to you pre-show about? I redid my rankings, so diving into it. But I would be. It's weird because really it's kind of, I don't know. I do a vibe trading. I don't know. Rich could get up mad at me because he does like his spreadsheet trading. I'm like a vibe guy. So like for me, like when I'm looking at my Dynasty roster and I'm giving up a first, like, which one do I feel more comfortable with giving up? I'd actually feel more comfortable giving up a first for Tank than I do for Zay. I'm a little bit more concerned about the Zay one, and I'm less concerned with Tank, and that's kind of also kind of how I look at it. Like, hey, how comfortable am I feeling here giving up this first with the range of outcomes of these guys? And to me, Tank is like, I'm not as, uncomfortable here. I think I could really kind of grab him, and he's going to, do well. He's a wide receiver. For me, he's wide receiver 24 right now in my rankings, where I have Zay a little bit lower than that. I have my wide receiver 26.
Okay. All right. I can get on board with that. I'm maybe drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit. I think I got Tank Dell wide receiver 17, something like
That's
that.
fine.
So yeah, I'm very excited about Tank Dell, and I think look, any value drop that you can get, people worried about the mouths to feed in the offense, people worried about the leg break or him getting shot a few weeks ago. I'm happy to scoop up the value and roll forward, quite frankly. The next guy we're going to talk about, though, my wide receiver 1 coming out, although he's dropped a little bit now, wide receiver 28 overall in ADP. Jordan Addison felt like he had a really impressive rookie season, but we've seen his dynasty value drop over the last 3-4 months. I think a lot of that is quarterback driven. Do you think that with a rookie quarterback under center, with sharing an offense with Justin Jefferson, do you think Jordan Addison is going to get enough volume that he can eat as well?
This is the guy that I'm probably the most concerned about. I actually dropped him lower than anybody else in my rankings today as I was doing the updated for the show. I actually have my wide receiver 30 now. I actually dropped him even lower than what his consensus is. I thought I was way lower, so I'm kind of glad it's wide receiver 28. But I don't know. He's so weird because it's in the middle, right? He had a 17% target share last year. That is it. But he still performed pretty well, right? Wide receiver 28 overall. And you're like, wow, if he just got a little bit more targets, he'd actually probably do well. But then you look at it and you think, man, Kirk Cousins was there and he's been able to prop up at least 3 fantasy relevant players in every offense he's played in, and looking last year was Hawkinson, Jefferson, and Addison was there. And you're like, hey, he's been able to do that. The problem I feel like is that Addison to me is going to probably have a boost early in this year. So if you're looking at it from a perspective of maybe you buy low now, go grab him. And because him and Jefferson are really, with Hawkinson not coming back probably till week 8 or 10 at the earliest, what I saw, it's interesting. The problem I have is that I'm a Michigan fan too. So everybody out there saying I'm biased, I'm not biased. I struggle with J.J. McCarthy from a quarterback standpoint. I've never been a stan. I love the guy because he won me a national title. So thank you, J.J. I was there at the Rose Bowl, so I appreciate you. But I do think that he struggles with what Addison does well. I mean, but then you go back to Addison, he made Kenny Pickett look good. So then you kind of go back and forth and you're like, what is this guy? So it's just clouded. I think JJ is going to take some time. I think Sam Darnold is going to hyper-focus target Jefferson when he's the starter early, because we've seen that consistently in his career. He's going to struggle to prop up Addison too. So I keep going back and forth, as you can tell on him. If you can move off of him for a first or something like that, I definitely would with Addison. I just struggle because he's talented. The talent's there, but man, this is one of those areas where he might fall into that weird, clouded Narnia room of just he's really talented, but he needs that better quarterback, or he needs that system that, fits him. And I just think in this tier, he does not offer a ton of upside. So I'd rather move off to someone that does offer more upside.
Yeah, I mean, I love Addison, the player, and I'm kind of at consensus on him. And I think if it was me, I'd just sort of take a wait and see approach, because I think I could easily believe a world where JJ McCarthy or Sam Darnold, whoever's going to play the majority of the season, is competent enough to hold up Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and this offense can move forward, because I think Kevin O'Connell's great. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a world where you could tell me that Jordan Addison is a solid wide receiver 2 fantasy in 2024. However, I think there's also a world where JJ McCarthy potentially struggles. We see Sam Darnold be the Sam Darnold that he's been in the NFL for the past 5 years, quite frankly, have issues. The offense becomes, as you said, hyper-focused on Justin Jefferson, and there's not enough for Jordan Addison to eat. So I kind of like him. I think I'd need a bit more than just a single first to be moved off him. But if I could move from Jordan Addison to a player in the tier, if I can go from Addison to Tank Dell or Zay Flowers or something like that, and get us, only have to add a small asset, can I do it for maybe I add a second and get a third back or something like that? Just a small little piece. I'd be doing that, just because I am nervous about Addison, because I think there is There's a low floor because I think it could be bad, but I don't necessarily think the ceiling is sky high because he shares an offense with Justin Jefferson. So I love the talent, but it's like low floor, low ceiling. I can't buy in, unfortunately. So yeah, I'm kind of at consensus. I wouldn't sell him for anything, but I think if you can kind of pivot off him, we're talking similar price range to the guys at Tank Dell, Zay Flowers. I'd love to move from Addison to one of those if I'm only having to add a small asset on top.
I actually made 2 deals recently with Addison, so I want to hear what you have to say. It's good context, though. I'm not just taking over your show. I just want to see what you think. What is it? So I made 2 different deals. They were rebuilders, and I'm a contender. So I traded a first and Addison for Chris Olave. So I got up to Olave's tier there. And then in another deal, I traded Addison for and a second for Rashee Rice. So I definitely paid a little high price there for Rashee. I know he's getting kind of priced. I'm higher on there, but the guy wanted a second. I offered a third. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to tier up. I don't mind taking the price there. So those are the 2 deals that I made. I made Addison second for Rice, and then Addison a first for Olave.
I love the Olave deal. I think that's a great move. I think that's the exact kind of move you can be going to make to go and get a stud, add a piece. Love that. I really like the Rashee Rice deal. But
it's aggressive.
I think, yeah, based on kind of consensus price, you've probably overpaid. We'll come on to Rashee Rice in a bit, but I don't hate it. I think it, as you said, it is aggressive. If it can help you win a title, if you get Rashee Rice back for the playoffs and he's going to still be that centerpiece of that Chiefs offense, that could look like a phenomenal trade in what we now 5 months time, something like that.
You got to roll sometimes. You got to roll the dice sometimes and have some fun.
Absolutely. Well, the next guy we're going to talk about, it feels like we're talking about loads of guys in that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 tier for Dynasty. Jaxon Smith-Njigba, a lot of people's wide receiver 1 is coming out, however, had a struggle, should we say, slightly last year. The wide receiver 29 in current ADP. Do you think that we're going to see JSN take that step forward, compete with targets, with DK, with Tyler Lockett, and maybe work his way up that target order and start to become a, hopefully, fantasy relevant player?
I struggle with JSN more than anybody because I was a big JSN guy, coming into the year. Obviously, I had thought like, hey, this kid is, to me, wide receiver 1 talent. Like he has that ability. He can definitely step in there. And that's where I was really at with JSN. The issue is just the usage, man. He just and like they neutered him, really, right? Like he had one of the worst ADOTs last year. But I always go back to this, and because I was watching the game as a Dallas fan, he dropped a big touchdown, or it wasn't really a drop. It's kind of an overthrow in that game where he would have had like a 50-yard touchdown. I swear, if he would have had that, we'd be talking about JSN having like wide receiver 20 value. Like it just one catch would have like changed his narrative there. But the issue was, it was just like, he was 15th last year in yards per out run in terms of, on the perimeter. You like that. He was, he had 40 perimeter targets, which was good there. You like it. I love his new offensive system. For those of you guys that don't know, the Washington offensive coordinator from college, Grubb coming over there. He likes to use the 3 wide receiver sets, and he's definitely like people love Jalen McMillan and those type of guys, Roman Dunze, Polk, those guys that came from that system. So he's definitely going to utilize that a little bit. And I can see that, but Jason's neutered while Tyler Lockett's there. Tyler Lockett just gets targets, y'all. Like that's all this guy does. He's just going to get targets. And you're going to take it away from him. So in my opinion, you're waiting another year probably, but I do like the system. I like where he's at. If I have him, I'm holding. I'm not selling at all. I like buying him for little prices right now, where I can get him. I think that he can really come on strong like middle of the year this year, where you're talking about JSN being the wide receiver 2. And then next year, profile wise in Grubb's offense, he's kind of a wide receiver 1 over DK based on PPR and targets and what he's able to do there. So I still think JSN could be the wide receiver 1 for Seahawks by next year. I still think it. I might be stupid. I might be crazy. It's probably bias in there because I love him as a talent, but I love the system that he's in. It's not going to be neutered like it was last year. And I think that from all the accounts, by all the things that I've seen JSN talk about this offseason, he hated that system. You could tell Waldron was not his favorite. And now he's in this new system that's pass happy. The biggest question mark is, what is Geno, right? What do we expect from Geno Smith moving forward? Can he get these guys the ball? But overall, I'm still in on JSN. I'm not quitting you, JSN.
So this is where I love getting you on, because I don't dive into the college worlds very
Yeah.
much until it comes to rookie season. So look, Shane Waldron was very simple. He wanted Geno Smith, one of the best deep throwers in the league, to push the ball outside numbers downfield.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, that didn't fit JSN. That was going to force feed targets to DK and Tyler Lockett. Are you telling me that Grubb is going to be a little bit modern, should we say, in the offense, and that could potentially open up a sliver of hope for JSN,
Yeah.
or do you think we're still going to see Geno push the ball downfield and outside numbers a high percentage of the time?
I think the biggest thing with him, so when you're looking at just what he's able to do, Grubb does a lot of stuff when you're looking at like from a run standpoint, the run game concepts he does is really great. I think that's going to definitely open up this offense a lot. But I think the big thing that Grubb does is he just has a ton of over the middle targets. So he does a lot of that. You're going to see a lot of over the middle targets. You're going to see a lot of crossing routes. You're going to see a lot of deep slants, a lot of things that projected JSN at Ohio State, kind of similar to what Ohio State JSN was. Grubb does that all. Like when you go watch the tape, when you're looking at like, Jalen McMillan over the middle at Polk, those things. Even Odunze, like Odunze wasn't really that outside guy. They still push it outside. That's where I think Metcalf's going to be in. But I was just reading and I was going through an article. They were talking about Grubb and his offense and everything there. They really want to move DK around too. So you're going to see DK move in a slot as well and the outside. I think you're going to see these guys more interchangeable. That's the other piece that I think that is good for JSN because that's where his talent's going to shine, right? I think he had one role in that offense last year. It's just like, hey, this is your role. This is what you're doing. Now Grubb is going to get these guys moving around in that system, kind of similar to Dave Canales out there at Carolina, the same way he does, like positionless football. That's what they're really going into on the offensive side. You're seeing these new guys, Grubb, doing these things where it's like, no, dude, we're going to have our best players out here. We're going to line you up, not an XYZ. You don't have an XYZ. You're in this spot for this route because we can identify this mismatch in this area here. We're going to get you the football. JSN's going to thrive in that. That's why I'm still in, because I think the system, this kind of positionless area, the system that they're going to do is going to do him so much for his benefits, his upside, what he's able to do on the field. And that's where Grubb is really going to do well for people out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting what you're saying about Grubb, because that, I guess, fits in really well with Mike McDonald and how he approaches defense in terms of, how he teaches things slightly differently in that positionless and that flexibility around the defensive front. So
yeah,
you'd expect if he's going to bring an offensive coordinator that's got a similar approach to it, I guess that could potentially unlock JSN. I guess for me, I hear what you're saying, and I think if I rostered JSN, I'd be holding him. But it's that going out and acquire him. I just think where he's valued at the moment, I basically prefer about 10 other guys in that similar value range. We're talking, similar values to Tank Dell, Zay Flowers, Nico Collins, Rome Odunze, Jayden Reed, even someone like, Rashee Rice, or if you want to go veterans, there's Debo, Cooper Kupp, all in that sort of similar value range. And I think I'd prefer all of those guys to JSN, which just means I'm unlikely to want to go out and buy him. But I agree with you. I think there is a kind of light at the end of the tunnel. It's just the tunnel might be a bit longer than you kind of hope and dream of at the moment.
You're going to have to hold your breath a little long. I was teaching my daughter that the other day. We're going through a tunnel. I was like, got to hold your breath. And you're just going to have to hold your breath a little longer out there. To your point about value, I did see, and he's on social media. He's out there in the Dynasty community. I know he did this trade, and I just popped up on my database. He did trade Jameson Williams and Malachi Corley for JSN. So that was a deal that he made, and that's...
I love that if you're getting JSN there, yeah.
That's okay. Like, if you're going to build on the Jameson Williams hype, and then you throw in a rookie there with Corley where it's like, hey, I don't really know what the upside's there. If you can do that kind of stuff, absolutely. What you're saying is true, though. Really, what you're going to probably have to do is you got to give a pick back. Like, if you're like, okay, hey, you want Christian Kirk for JSN. Okay, give me a second or give me a first. Like, that's the problem, is you don't want to give up plus asset for JSN because of his his cloudy outcome, especially early in the year. So yeah, I'm with you there. But if I can kind of move off some of these like weird pieces like Jameson Williams and capitalize on some buzz, that's definitely an option that you can go out there and do.
Hey, I'd take a bag of biscuits right now for Jameson Williams. So yeah, if I could tear up off him to go and get JSN, I'm doing that every day of the week. So yeah, I'm not a believer in any of this Jameson Williams hypes whatsoever. Next guy, we're going to talk about another one that I could talk about all day. Jayden Reed, the true wide receiver one in Green Bay. At wide receiver 32, Kev, is this just grossly undervalued?
You know, you and me are going to differ on this. I think this is where we maybe disagree a little bit with Jayden Reed. I have him at wide receiver 35, so it's not too far down. I think my biggest concern is not the player, right? I think that he gets heavily targeted when he's out there. I think 25% target rate per route run, so that's pretty good there. Points per game from a fantasy perspective, he was first in this wide receiver room, so you like that. And I know he finished his top 12 and probably a quarter of his games that he was out there, when he was out there in there. So you like that. I think the issue for me is these other guys have really stepped up in his absence when he wasn't out there, when he was kind of, I don't know, he's kind of a little weird, banged up. Watson, I'm not a big Christian Watson guy, but if he's healthy and he's on the field, he's going to get some targets. And in Wicks, I mean, there are some Wicks truthers out there, Rich. I see them, and I don't know where they're at. They're crazy. Even on YouTube, we had some weird YouTube comments coming after me. I was like, I like Wicks, but not like wide receiver 24 Wicks. Like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. The thing with me is like, how much do I trust that offense can distribute targets to where it makes it worthy of grabbing Reed where he's at ADP? I think it could be because he's so low right now. Like, if you're betting on Reed, it's not a bad bet because wide receiver 32, he could definitely outperform that a few games of the year, and you're excited about that in that weird tier. So I don't mind it. I think it's fair though. I don't think he's grossly underrated. I think it's a fair rating where he's at based on his potential outcomes next year.
Yeah, I mean, I really like Reed. I think he's the number one target in this offense. I wouldn't be shocked if we're talking about him in that kind of Deontay Johnson mold where I think he just earns targets, and I think he's going to be getting it wouldn't shock me if we're talking 140, 150 targets for him next year, fully healthy, and he's, never going to get that huge high value touches type work, but I think he could just be an absolute volume monster. My one concern is that I'm worried that the Packers are starting to kind of pigeonhole him into a slot only receiver. We saw it happen more and more as the season went on. He ended the season 75% of routes run out of the slot. He started the season, he was like 60, 65%. And then by the end of the year, he was almost exclusively a slot receiver, 92% of routes run against Chicago. That concerns me because I think that limits his ceiling significantly just because of the type of targets he's going to be getting. He's going to need that 140, 50 targets to be a wide receiver too. So I love the talent. I loved him coming out. I love this offense. I think this offense could go wild, but I do kind of get the slight knock that like if we get Jayden Reed, we've got Watson, we've got Dubs, we've got Dontavia Wicks, we've got the two tight ends, we've got, throwing resources at the running back room. It feels like this could be an awful lot of mouths to feed. And even though he could be the target leader, it might not be the volume he needs to kind of produce massively. If he's in that value bucket again, all of these wide receiver, sophomore wide receivers seem to be in that wide receiver 2 to 3 range. Let's throw a first at them and kind of call them there. I really don't think you need to pay that to go and buy Jayden Reed. I think you can tier up and get him significantly lower than that. I'm a little bit higher than consensus. He's my wide receiver 27 right now. But yeah, I really like him as a under the radar buy because I don't think people are talking about him at the moment. And I think that he could be the type of player that we see some significant hype on in training camp and in the preseason as kind of Jordan Love's number one target.
Yeah, I'm not paying a first for him. Who would you rather have, him or Ladd? Because I see a lot of deals with him and Ladd McConkey together. Like, where are you at with those guys?
I mean, I'm much lower than consensus on Ladd. I was pretty much out on Ladd at cost. So yeah, I mean that's easy for me. I mean, Ladd is hang on, let me scroll down. I've got to go a long way to get to Ladd McConkey. Ladd's my wide receiver 52 right now. So yeah, I mean there's an ocean between Jayden Reed and Ladd McConkey for me right now. But I appreciate that I'm high on Reed and low on McConkey. So in consensus, they're probably in similar buckets.
Okay. All right. I just thought I'd ask. I think it's interesting.
The final guy we're going to talk about, though, maybe the most consensus player in this the most contentious, player in this entire list. Rashee Rice did phenomenal things on the season last year. Was a top 12 wide receiver from week 7 on last year, won people titles, but we won't get into the off-season issues. We'll say there's some legal troubles that are rumbling, could get suspended this coming season, and therefore his dynasty value has absolutely plummeted down at wide receiver 34 at the moment. ADP, Kev, are you buying this potential dip, or are you seriously concerned and looking to get out while you can?
Buy the dip, Rich. Buy it. Buy it all off season. I've been buying him all off season, man. And that's part of it is I'm not afraid to take the risk, and I see guys out there very like, there's a couple of dynasty analysts out there are like, oh, with Xavier Worthy coming there and Travis Kelce bouncing back. Well, I mean, it's not a for sure thing that Travis Kelce is going to bounce back. He's 34. Like he's saying, hey, give me the volume. But look what happened last offseason. He messed up his knee a little bit, and then he was pretty much, done for like 8 weeks there. Like he just wasn't out there. And I know because I drafted some SFB, so thank you, Kelce. But when you're looking at that upside, you didn't get it. And Rashee kind of really stepped in, and he found a nice little thing with Mahomes. Like weeks 12 to 18, he was cooking out there at 12th in target share, 10th in yards per route run. You like that from a fantasy points perspective. I mean, he was a top 24 guy. I think that legally, we can do the moral thing if you want, but let's be honest, we all have rostered Tyreek Hill and Mike Vick if you're old as my ass, right? Like sorry, I don't know if we can say that, but back in the day, like we rostered these guys. Like, and so to me, when you're looking at his value, he is significantly different than what Xavier Worthy is. Like they are two different players. They are two different in this scheme. They're going to be very opposites. They complement each other well. But I do think Rice can be the leading wide receiver. Now, Kelce is probably going to be the leading in targets for them if he stays healthy. But why wouldn't you want a guy that's probably going to be his number 2 target guy once he comes back from whatever suspension, which I don't know if he's going to get suspended that long. Why wouldn't you want to target that guy at wide receiver 34 prices tied to Mahomes? And they love this guy. They went out and got him, and they have that. The maturity thing, you got to live with that sometimes. It is what it is. You just know the risk going in. But I'm buying based on his target share, what he's able to do, opportunity. I'm all about the opportunity cost, and I think that he's one of those players is worthy of the risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime anybody asks me any dynasty advice at the moment, whether it's players to go trade for, what should I do with this roster, the response of go and buy Rashee Rice is almost the first thing I say, because he's just so grossly undervalued. I think where he's being valued at wide receiver 34 at the moment is as if he's going to be suspended for the entire season. I think if you took away the entire 2024 season and said, right, Rashee Rice will be available again week 1, 2025, I think he's probably properly valued. I'd be gobsmacked. I'm not a legal expert, but I've seen plenty of people talk about this, and just looking at what the NFL do with suspensions, I don't think he's going to get suspended in an entire season. So that immediately says he's undervalued. I think he's a solid wide receiver 2 for Dynasty that you can get for a late wide receiver 3 prices right now. I love the way that he came on and continued to grow into the offense. I love the way that, look, he's not the best route runner, but this is an offense that's going to use him in ways that he can be at his best. We're not expecting him to say, right, you're going to be our X receiver, go and run these 5 routes and we'll get you the ball if you can get open. They're saying, right, Rashee Rice, what can you do? Let's use those benefits and we will scheme plays open, and then you can be a beast with the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
I am a little bit concerned about the ADOT. I think a 5.0 ADOT last year, it caps that kind of upside and that ceiling. I think he has to be phenomenal in order to produce elite fantasy numbers. But I think that as he, we saw it last year, as he continued to play, his route running got better. He got used in a more variety of ways. And I hope that with another offseason under his belt, with another year of, Andy Reid being able to scheme things up, I think we could see that package of plays increase. And it's not just going to be, okay, Rashee Rice, we're going to run you on screens, we're going to run you on drags, and that's the only way we're going to get the ball in your hands. I think he can start to run some more complex routes, and hopefully that allows that ceiling. And as you said, as Travis Kelce begins to continue to age out, and it is happening, you can believe that he's a superstar, but the production's only going to decrease for Travis Kelce. I think that Rashee Rice is going to be the one in this offense. I'm a huge Xavier Worthy guy, but I think that the target volume is going to be leaning Rashee Rice's way moving forward. So yeah, I love going out and buying him. Consensus price at the moment is 2 seconds. I think if you can get him for anything less than a first, that's an absolute smash. I love it. Do you have any kind of concerns about maybe sort of getting too many shares of Rashee Rice? I think I'm at 33% at the moment, which is about my limit. So yeah, do you think we could be almost convincing too many guys to go out and buy Rashee Rice?
Oh, I'm for sure. Like if he gets suspended longer than what I expect, I might be in some trouble out here. I'm glad my address isn't out there on the social media train because, but no, you hit every on the head. Like I think that it's wild to me what his ranking is right now. Like I have him at wide receiver 2020. So like I'm a much higher in terms of what, consensus is. And I just think it's the pendulum is way too the tier that he's in, like this, all these dudes are all in the same tier. Like when you look at wide receivers from like wide receiver, probably after Tyreek Hill, in my opinion. So like really where it starts, probably Michael Pittman, Devonta Smith, wherever you have those guys, all the way down to Rashee. And then maybe if you want to throw in like Pickens, like in that range, like in Zay and those guys, like not a lot of, there's not a lot of discrepancy between those guys. A lot of those guys are going to shift up and down in these tiers. So if he's getting valued at the lowest tier, the lowest part of that tier there, if I can move any of those guys for plus assets per Rashee, I'll do it. Like I'm like, hey, I'll just grab it there. I learned that from Dave Wright, FF Spaceman. He used to do a lot of content. Now he's kind of semi-retired, but a few years ago, me and him talked a lot about this. He's like, hey, if I can move around in tiers, and those tiers where those values are always going to kind of stay fluid, where I'm not really worried I'm losing a ton, I don't mind kind of plussing up and getting another asset. And then one way to also look at this too, like if you can get an asset plus, like on the plus side for Rashee too, like let's say you have to give up somebody in that range, like let's say T Higgins, and then you're going to move Rashee and maybe get a first back for that or whatever. That's really an off ramp too. Like give yourself an off ramp. Leo Pasiga talks about all the time. Like, all right, you're taking the risk on Rashee. Like I'm all right, I have some risk here, but now I have this pick too now. That's my off ramp. Okay, I missed on Rashee or he keeps getting in trouble or whatever the case, but now I have that off ramp that I can maneuver now and kind of use it. That's a good way also to look at buying players like this. Give yourself an off ramp just in case, and if you're going to overextend yourself a little bit, make sure you have that off ramp there. But yeah, I'm a buy Rashee Rice. That's really what you should be doing right now in Dynasty.
No, absolutely, and I love that point. We did a whole show last week with Rush Fisher about tiering up, tiering down, and I think wide receiver is perfect for me. The gap between my wide receiver 14 and my wide receiver 36 in my trade values is a second round pick. Like that's 22 wide receivers that are covered by a second round pick in value. I think you can move anywhere in and around there, and quite frankly, you can move up and down and just add asset,
Mm-hmm.
and you do 3 trades within those tiers. Suddenly you got 3 second round picks, and you're sitting laughing as we head into sort of 2024 and 2025 and beyond, quite frankly. Well, that concludes it. That is our sophomore scrutiny series for the wide receiver position wrapped up. Kev, one final takeaway from you. If you can go out and buy any of these wide receivers, we got very, very poetic and wax lyrical about Tank Dell. We got excited about Rashee Rice. Who's the one that you want to go out and buy most as we head into their sophomore seasons?
Well, since I've already bought him a lot, Rashee's up there. But if I'm outside of Rashee, Tank Dell to me. I think Tank Dell range of outcomes could be like low end wide receiver 1 at the end of next year. We're talking tied to CJ Stroud, loves him in that offense, valued pretty low right now as compared to what he could finish at. So Tank is the guy that I would definitely go out there and try to target.
Awesome. Well, we love it every time you can come on. Remind everyone, where can they find you? Where can they find your work?
Yeah, you guys can find me over at the Devi Royale. We're over there now full time. We're kind of going alone now. Going over there. We have rankings for Dynasty, Devi. We just got a partnership with Fantrax, so we're going to be pushing some, college fantasy and those type of things. You can find us at the YouTube channel, the Devi Royale YouTube, our Patreon, or our Substack. So just type in the Devi Royale. You can find anything there. And if you join our Patreon, you get access to everything: our Substack, written work, all the stuff that's going on there as well.
Absolutely love it. Huge fans of all your work from the guys here, and love everything you're doing. So if you've not checked it out, go ahead and do it. It will make you a much better fantasy player, guaranteed. Well, that is it for today. We'll be back very soon. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button, and we will be back sooner than you know it.